This is the November 13th meeting of Women Painters West 2025. And this evening we have Danielle Eubank talking to us. Annie, please give us an introduction.
Thank you, Danielle, for coming. I have known Danielle a long time ago when she had a show in Long Beach. And it was before COVID. And I was very surprised what all she has done on the ocean, painting. And painting, it's most of the time is water. And it's abstraction, but it's real water. So, and I love the way the movement and all the colors she puts in her painting. But I think she will be better than myself to tell about herself.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Annie, and thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Annie, for inviting me. I assume people can hear me okay?
Yes.
I'll just switch over to my presentation. I can talk and do this at the same time.
I just made you co-host, so you should be able to do share screen now.
Okay, good. That will make it easier. Does that look like I'm sharing screen to everybody?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. There's nothing, well, okay, apart from painting or creating art, there's nothing I like more than talking about it with colleagues. So I'm really honored to be able to do that with everybody tonight. I am going to talk about a little bit introduction of who I am, talk a little bit about what materials I use, because I assume that everybody here has a slightly different technique. And then I'm going to talk about 3 different projects that I've been working on. One is One Artist, 5 Oceans, which is what Annie originally saw in Long Beach. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to talk about some Superfund sites, explain what I mean by that, and the San Francisco Bay. Those sort of go together. And then a project I'm working on right now about the California Channel Islands. I suggest that unless I'm like really not making sense or my audio or something doesn't work, probably best to save the questions to the end if people can. So on we go. So who the hell am I? I am an environmentalist, so I think no matter what my job had ended up being, a full-time professional artist, whether my job had been something else, I still would have been an environmentalist and figured out a way to talk about things that we can all do to create a more sustainable planet. In that I am an explorer, and an experimenter. I put those together because I feel like, and I think you guys probably agree in your own practices, you're always experimenting, right? So whether I'm on an expedition or whether I'm working on a new work of art or piece of art, I feel like I'm always experimenting. I consider myself a photographer in that I'm not super technical. I've had a lot of exhibitions of my photography, but I'd prefer to think of myself as a painter who takes photographs. And then finally, I'm a painter. So expedition artist, what do I mean by that? This is a photo of me on the Phoenician ship expedition. I have been on 4 expeditions that involve either old boats or recreations of old boats. One is called the Borobudur ship expedition, where we sailed from Indonesia to Seychelles, South Africa, and Ghana. I'll show you a picture of that boat in a second. And then Phoenicia, which was a recreation of a Phoenician boat where we circumnavigated Africa. I've sailed to the high Arctic, to Antarctica, so the Southern Ocean, and then now I've been sailing back and forth to the Channel Islands. I mentioned that I was studying the Channel Islands to a friend of mine, and they assumed I meant the channel in between England and France. So when I say the Channel Islands, I mean the California Channel Islands in this particular case. The materials I use, so this is a photograph of my kit when I'm out and about. This is actually in Syria, and this is what I use when I'm sketching at home, when I'm working, like if I'm doing some figurative art with a live model. It's what I take with me everywhere. In case the most important thing here, though, of course, is the coffee. But in case you're interested, I have here a list of what I like to use. So there's a photo of what I use. It's all oil paint, as well as non-toxic, or at least as untoxic materials as I can. And here's a list of the products and the colors that I use. And then some of the expeditions. So the Phoenician expedition, so Herodotus, who is considered the father of history, said that the Phoenicians were the first people to circumnavigate Africa. And he said that they did it in 600 BCE, which is 2,000 years before the Portuguese did it, right? So we built the boat. It was created by, totally masterminded by a guy named Philip Beale, an Englishman. And he said, all right, well, let's create this boat based on some shipwrecks that have been found in the Mediterranean and elsewhere. And let's see if a ship like this could actually circumnavigate Africa. It took us 2 years and 2 months. I wasn't on the ship the entire time. I think my husband would have forgotten who I was if I had done that. But what I did is I painted along the way. So I would set up a studio as we were in a port, and then on the ship itself, I have 3 sketchbooks that I take with me. So I was constantly sketching and taking photographs. So that was 600 BCE, a replica 600 BCE boat. And then the first expedition I was on was a little later, 800 Common Era. So I guess that's, let's see, what's 8 and 6? That's 1,200 years later. So it's a much newer boat. But as you can see, it's a strange looking vessel. So this is an Indonesian boat based on stone relief carvings in the middle of the Borobudur temple in central Java. So if any of you have ever been to that temple, it's one of the stone relief carvings on that stupa temple. And this is a bit of living history. So we know that they built that boat because it's on this temple. But what we don't know is why around the same time is there cultural evidence of shared cultural identity and food and things like that in Western Africa. So same guy, Philip Beale, he set out to show that a boat of this design could make it across the Indian Ocean, around the Cape of Good Hope, up the west coast of Africa to Ghana, to Western Africa. And so that was a 6-month journey. And with that one, when I wasn't on the boat, I would fly ahead to the next port and sketch and paint, and also set up meetings with various legations and things that came into town. Then the Arctic, very different vessel, very different kind of experience, and I'll show you how different it is in the paintings that I created from it. So this is a 3-masted barkentine boat that I was part of. It was with artists and scientists thinking about climate change. So it was a very different kind of project where we sailed up to the very north high Arctic, just about where the polar ice cap started, so about 78 degrees north. And then Antarctica. So that no fancy boats there. Thank you very much. I think my mother would have had a heart attack. So this was on a much more traditional metal double-hulled boat, modified research vessel. And I was fortunate enough to be able to sail there and work a couple years ago to complete all of the oceans. So the Pacific is where, so the Pacific, to get to there is much more local, of course. I grew up on the Pacific. I'm a native Californian. I grew up very near the water. And so I've always been exposed to it and have continue to go on sailing expeditions there. So that completes, that's all 5 oceans. There are 5 oceans on this planet. Don't be confused by 7 seas. I don't know where that came from. There's 5 oceans currently. When I say currently, there's some debate about, there used to be like the South Pacific versus the North Pacific and various things like that. But they've sort of some agreement on there being 5 oceans. So the project, One Artist, 5 Oceans, this is in Long Beach. This is a very short film that I made that was shown at the IMAX theater there at the Aquarium of the Pacific. And some of the paintings that I created from there. So starting with the Southern Ocean, this is one of the paintings. So what I like to do is I like to take something that we all know, water, right? Or even when I do my portraits or my images of other things. And I enjoy trying to abstract it. It's kind of like what Annie was saying. It's sort of real, but it's sort of abstract at the same time. I like to kind of walk that line. And the overall goal is to kind of get people to slow down and look, you know. I'm very passionate about getting people to, if I can, you know, just look at the environment just a little bit longer, just a little bit more, see what's around you. So that's the overall arching goal of mine. This is also the Southern Ocean. When there is old ice, like a glacial ice, the older it gets, the more aqua it turns. So I wouldn't ever look at any of my paintings and think that they're supposed to be exactly like real life, because a lot of it just comes out of my head. But that's what's going on in this painting. This is also the Southern Ocean. So this is my interpretation of how the different waves work, right? And expresses some of the ways that I feel when I'm looking at the water in the Southern Ocean. And they are all different. Hopefully we can chat about this at the end, but I feel very differently about the different water. Partly it has to do with the angle of light, and partly has to do with just what's going on in my mind. And here's some of them together. So this is at a gallery in Palo Alto, the different paintings. So you get an idea of the sizes of some of these. These are all about 60 inches wide, thereabouts. Now let's talk a little bit about the Atlantic. So I'm actually sitting on a Phoenician wall in the Mediterranean in Syria. In this photo, sketching, and that's usually how I work when I'm on an expedition, is just sitting wherever I can and start sketching. But it was really cool to be able to sit on this 2,000-year-old wall. This is a reflection of the sail of the Phoenicia ship in Syria, so in the Mediterranean. And what I do what I did in this painting, and what I often do, is I think about the colors that I'm trying to get to first, and then, or what I'm trying to express first, the kind of feelings that I'm trying to emote. And this one, I started with food, because that's my favorite thing. I started with cranberries, blueberries, cream, and espresso coffee, and then created the painting from there. This is also the Atlantic. I don't always put rubbish in my paintings, but in this one I certainly did. you see a floating drinks can and a reflection of somebody's private boat. This is one of the few places where you still see some wooden boats. Usually they're fiberglass. You've probably noticed that at our own marinas here off of the California, or I should say West Coast. They're usually fiberglass. And now let's talk a little bit about the Indian Ocean. So this is me on the back of the Borobudur ship, the stern of the Borobudur ship. So as a crew member on these vessels, the first two vessels that I talked about, I'm doing all the crew duties that everyone else is doing. So I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm steering the ship, I'm keeping a lookout for big oil tankers and various other large vessels that might not see a little boat, a little wooden, dark wooden boat floating in the ocean. And then in my quote unquote free time, I'm sketching and taking photographs. All right, so the Indian Ocean. This is Beira, Mozambique. It's funny, I actually coincidentally had somebody over to my studio today who was looking around and noticing some of the paintings I have of Mozambique, and they all seem to share this kind of warm palette. There's lots of browns and whites and grays and oranges and yellows, and I think what it is that when I was in Beira, I went to a lot of fabric stores and absolutely loved the fabrics that I saw people, mainly women, but also the men wearing there. And I think that I was probably subconsciously influenced by this fabric that I saw. More Indian Ocean. This is Jakarta, Indonesia. When I was in Jakarta, there weren't a lot of sort of pleasure ships where I was. It was mainly industrial or naval. So I was communicating that kind of feeling that you have in the Bay of Jakarta in this painting. Now moving on to the Arctic, different feel, right? Probably this feels more abstract. And you know, I was really sort of frustrated when I came back from the Arctic. So I had painted the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean before I painted the Arctic Ocean. And as I mentioned earlier, I like to take something that's kind of normal, right? Like this painting here, and then abstract it. But when I got to the Arctic Ocean, it was already abstract. Things would freeze in the middle of the day, and then they'd stop freezing, and there'd be these crazy ice forms on the beach, or glaciers, or different kind of abstract shapes happening just naturally. So I didn't know how to deal with it. It was probably the hardest creative problem that I've ever been faced with. And so it took me, I'd say it took me a good 6 months to a year before I created anything that I was happy with. And this is the first things that came out of that effort. So what I ended up doing is I ended up putting more of myself into the images, more out of my own brain, more out of my own creative brain, rather than kind of portraying what I saw. So as life goes, something that seems like it was really awful turned out to be the best thing that could possibly have happened to me. Because ever since then, I've put more of myself into my paintings, and this is another example of that. The Arctic, there is no yellow in the water in this particular way, but I put it in there to express how joyous the Arctic Ocean makes me feel. This is also the Arctic, same kind of idea. You'd be surprised actually at how close this is to reality. If you were to just look at some crazy boats reflected in the water, you might see some of these kinds of shapes. Probably you guys have noticed that on your own adventures and rides on boats. Maybe some of you are surfers. I get a lot of surfers contact me and say, "Oh my God, that's exactly how the water looks." And this is from New Ailson, Svalbard, which is the northernmost settlement on the planet. Now let's talk about the Pacific. I have been, as I sort of alluded to, back and forth on the Pacific every chance I get, basically. My most recent passion has been trying to get to as many Channel Islands as I can. This is me sketching on Santa Cruz Island a few months back, actually. When was this? Yeah, it was about a few months back, maybe the beginning of the year, or maybe it was almost a year ago, actually, now that I think about it. There's actually a cliff right next to me, which is not quite in the photograph. So that's quite fun. There's each one of the Channel Islands is completely distinct, as is a view of the Pacific from Taiwan. So this is looking at our same ocean, but looking east. So looking east and seeing the Pacific Ocean is a mind warp, and quite fun. This was in Tam Shui. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong for any of our Mandarin speakers. You can please correct me. But where the Tam Shui River empties out, it is kind of green and kind of tropical and kind of, well, wet. Of course, the river's wet, but I mean, just the air, everything feels very wet. And that's what I was capturing in this painting. And then our very own Santa Monica, you see a little bit of the Pacific Ocean. It's a little bit oily in this case, or it looks oily. I don't think it actually is oily, but sometimes water has an almost viscous feeling. And it can change, you know, from half an hour, 15 minutes later, it can look completely different. But I love the kind of dark, almost Prussian blues that we have in our Pacific Ocean. So that's a brief introduction to the One Artist, Five Oceans project. It did take me 20 years to get to all these places and to make these paintings. I continue to paint these oceans as well as many rivers and seas and different bodies of water. In fact, one such one is the Gowanus Canal in Brooklyn. So the Gowanus Canal started out as a tidal creek about 150 years ago. And then as the Industrial Revolution happened, I guess, or maybe a little after that, in the 19th century, a lot of heavy machinery was being made and a lot of things needed to be shipped into New York. And so the best way they thought to do that was to dam up this creek and to create a canal. So they did. They created the Gowanus Canal and they, you know, shipped all of their stuff into New York. But what has happened is if you dam up a creek, all of those heavy metals and all kinds of chemicals that I can't even pronounce have collected in this canal. And it is one of the most polluted, one of the most famously polluted bodies of water in the United States. So the EPA has a designation called a Superfund site. They don't get any special money for it or anything like that, the people that have these sites. It's just a designation that the EPA has to denote when something is super, super polluted. And what you see in this photo is they're cleaning it up. They're dredging it and they're taking away the stuff at the bottom and they're trying to clean it. I don't know what they're doing to try and clean it, but I walked up to some of the workmen when I was here and asked them about it. They were young guys, you know, and I said, "Oh, so what do you know about it?" And they didn't know much either. And but one guy did say, he goes, this is supposed to be finished by 2025. So I was there, a couple of years ago. He goes, but I think it's going to take about 20 more years. And I said, sort of jokingly, oh, it's good job security, right? And he said, yeah, he was like really, really excited that he'd be able to have some job security by cleaning up this mess. So that's a little bit of a silver lining, I guess. This is a painting of mine of the Gowanus Canal. So this is 66 inches wide, in person, 42 inches high. You can kind of see, it wasn't totally deliberate, but you can kind of see how angry I feel about how messed up and filthy this water is. This is also the Gowanus Canal. This is a detail. This one is actually 60 inches tall by 42 inches wide. And with this one, what I've done is I've let the ground come through on this painting. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll use whatever's left over on my palette, and I'll take a rag and I'll wipe that onto canvas. So I buy canvas in 10-meter rolls, 10 meters by, I'm going to have to mix imperial and metric, but they're 10-meter rolls and they're 84 inches wide. So I'll just lay it out on my studio floor, and then whatever's left over on my palette, I'll rub it on this canvas. And in this case, I let it come through because I thought the colors were kind of cool, but also kind of creepy at the same time.
Danielle Eubank.
This is also the Gowanus Canal. So this is also 60 inches wide by 42 inches high. And I've reversed some of the coloration here to really get people to look at the shapes. And it's a little hard to tell in the image, but it's very brushy. There's a lot of layers here. And I used a fan brush, which I don't always do, to create a kind of a loose blending. So the blacks and the purples, there's yellows and blacks and purples and very light greens, and these different colors are brushed on here. Alameda Island. Now, Alameda Island, you've probably heard of Alameda or been to Alameda in the Bay Area. It is an island now. Originally it was a peninsula. It was kind of a marshy area with a lot of oak trees. There was an oak forest there. And then being in the 19th century, they made it into an island. And even from that time, there were boats and ferries that would go from the East Bay to San Francisco from that place. There still are. And then is it the Navy, or I think it might technically be the Air Force, took it over, and it had a huge role to play in defense in the Second World War. And then they continued to have planes and boats there for the military until the 1990s. And so, as quite often happens when there's been a military presence, there become Superfund sites, something to do with the various ammunitions and various chemicals that they use in military bases. So I had a great time painting Alameda Island. They've been trying since the 90s to get people to move back there. They've built all kinds of housing developments and things like that, but they're not quite there yet, even though the 90s was a really, really long time ago. It was like more than 30 years. It's still not there, and I recommend people visit it, partly because it's very interesting. It's sort of like half and half. There's also some interesting remnants and naval history there. This is also Alameda Island. This is where the ferries leave, and in this painting I'm expressing kind of how I feel about it and its relationship to San Francisco, to the city proper. Of course, that overlaps with my project about the San Francisco Bay. The San Francisco Bay, I feel, is like something that I should know a lot more about than I do. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I don't feel like I know all that much about it. So this is a good way for me to learn more about it. This is near Moffitt's Field. You might recognize the landscape. So that's looking sort of northeast. It's also near the Charleston Slough. The Petaluma River is part of my San Francisco Bay project. So the Petaluma River runs south from Sonoma County into the San Francisco Bay complex. I think it's technically San Pablo Bay at that point. We call it the San Francisco Bay, but it's actually a whole bunch of different collections of water that are joined up together. And this is a reflection of a cement factory. This is also Petaluma River, same cement factory, different interpretation of it. It had the Petaluma Rivers had a huge role to play in California history since way before the gold rush even. And General Vallejo lived up there as well. So I enjoy that. I enjoy looking at the abstraction. I also enjoy looking into the history a little bit. Palo Alto, very, you can see what the sketches I was working on those days turned into. This is the Charleston Slough. This is a great success story. So what happened here was it was a salt marsh and had been some parts of the bay of the South Bay have been used as salt marshes forever. The native people that lived here also were able to derive salt from there. And then when the gold rush happened, I should say, the 49ers came and salt was derived from the San Francisco Bay, still is. In this case, though, it had kind of killed, there was just too much salt there, and so it had killed off a lot of the natural species, and they've rehabilitated it. So now if you go to the Charleston Slough, next time you're around Palo Alto, you can see all kinds of native birds and species, and a lot of people with very long lenses on their cameras observing these different birds and things. It's a really, really wonderful experience. I recommend that. This is Alcatraz. Now you may be wondering, what the heck? This is kind of a little play for me because I remember, I don't know if any of you remember this, but I remember there being a big thing quite a while ago when I was like a kid that said that they painted people's cells in prisons kind of a peach color in order to calm the prisoners. And so I'm alluding to that. Of course, Alcatraz is not that color. Alcatraz is the prison is actually a kind of a green color on the inside, but that's what I'm making reference to and having some fun with it. California Channel Islands. So this is Santa Cruz Island, looking northwest. In this case, I also enjoy painting landscapes, but I probably show more of my water paintings. This is Santa Cruz Island. And this was quite fun. So I put this in the show at Cal Poly Pomona. I don't know if any of you have participated in their ink and clay show. That white stripe is ink. So everything else is oil paint, and then that white stripe is ink. And this is approximately 30 by 40 inches. This is also Santa Cruz Island. So this is all oil paint. But what I had fun doing in this painting is working on a compositional idea where I broke the water up basically into 4 different quadrants to try and help the viewer's eye move around the page as it will. This is Santa Barbara Island, another one of the Channel Islands. And this is a reflection of the land in the water. And I'm having fun with that. The orangey color is the kind of the iron in the earth. And then the green alludes to some of the seaweed and things that are underneath the water. Now, a little further afield, this is actually Tahiti. I had the good fortune of going to Tahiti last Christmas, and this is the view, or I should say my interpretation of the view from inside a freshwater cave looking out. So what happened, and I've got 3 paintings here to show you, and then that's all I have for tonight, is my family and I went to this freshwater cave that a friend of mine who lives there was showing us. So we went swimming in there, and it was, of course, pitch black because it's a cave. And my husband and my daughter kept swimming, and they kept going and going and going. And next thing you knew, they were like a football field away, right? They were like 100 meters back, and that was a little scary for me. I was like, oh my God, they're so far back. They were just like these little pins at the end of this cave. So that was a little scary. So, but I went out pretty far, I didn't completely chicken out. And then I turned around, and when I turned around, what I saw was the mouth of the cave with like different ferns and all kinds of different tropical plants hanging down, and bright blue sky and light. And that is what this painting is about, is turning around and looking back out at the light coming in. That's also what this painting is about, that light and that tropical growth reflected in the water. And then finally from this series, this painting. So in this one, it's the same concept, the light and the life coming through and reflecting onto the water. But compositionally, what I've done is I've created 1, 2, 3, 4 different stripes. So there's like a violet stripe, and then there's a light aqua stripe, and then the French ultramarine blue stripe, and then a green stripe, punctuated by these circles. So that's what I'm working with compositionally. You can see it here at Launch Gallery. So I have Marat 2, 3, 5, and then the Republic of Hout Bay. And then those are flanked on either side by 2 beautiful ink paintings by Katie Stubblefield. And then finally, this is today. This is my what I'm working on right now. So this is it's already actually from this morning. Looks a little bit different. And that's me. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Perhaps we should, okay, unshare, and then, okay, so let's have some hands up for anyone who has any questions. I see lots of applause going on.
You guys
Actually,
are too kind. Thank you.
Andrea has a question. You're muted, Andrea. Andrea, you're still muted. I don't know if you have your hand up by accident.
So I have one.
Okay, Bets, go ahead while Andrea's.
I'm here.
Oh, you were muted. Okay, Andrea, go ahead. You just have your hand up first, and then Bets after that.
Thank you. I was curious, in the beginning of your presentation, you said "we" about the boats. So I was wondering if you were financially involved in launching those boats or requisitioning them to do these excursions. So that's my first question. And then my second question is, I'd love to know your process of painting
Yeah, absolutely.
your images.
Yeah, no, I'm not rich. When I say we, it's just, I feel very much part of the team to help build the boats. And as expedition artist, I was the official painter and photographer. aboard these expeditions. The man who has put together these expeditions has become a great friend. In fact, he hosted my husband's and my wedding in the UK. So yeah, no, I feel very much like it's a giant community project. There were, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of people that worked on these boats. And so I do feel very much like it's we, I guess. And then my technique. So I order these, I work on these, you know, off of these rolls of linen. And I use oil primed linen. I try to avoid using plastics as much as possible, and that includes, I don't usually use acrylic paint. I usually use oil primed linen and then paint onto it with oil paint. So I'll cut it. So I'll decide what I'm going to do, and then I'll cut out the linen, tape it onto a board, as you know, like just a large board. And then I will sketch what I'm going to draw on there, usually in charcoal. Lately, I've been experimenting with pencil because I like the way that pencil bleeds through the paint. But and then comes the slow, and well, that's like really slow, right? Drawing your picture on there and then figuring out what you want to do. I use a lot of photographs as source material. I wish I had a photographic memory and could remember what a droplet looks like, but no, I can't do anything close to that. And you know, you guys can see now from these paintings that the game that I'm playing is how to make something look kind of real, you know, like physics wouldn't be too upset with me, but at the same time abstract and putting my own personality into it. So then I just work up those layers until I'm happy, and then take it off of the board, and I do all of my own stretching and all that kind of thing onto wooden stretcher bars. Does that answer your question?
Well, I was more curious about like um your background colors and washes. I mean, you apply those first and then draw upon that?
Yeah,
Because you,
so I really, really like to have a ground. Sometimes the ground will be from my palette, so I'll actually just scrape that off and then rub it on. And sometimes I'll decide what color I want my ground to be. So, for example, let's see the painting behind me. I think I started with a orangey pink ground on that one. So I took a orangey pink, or you know, a couple of different colors mixed in orangey pink, and then rubbed that on with a cloth. And then in that case, I let it dry and then started drawing onto that. And then the picture that you saw that's on my easel today, what I've done with that one is a little bit different, where I have scraped the painting onto the canvas with a giant, what do you call it? Like a lath and plaster type, like a big palette knife, to create kind of a thick spreading of paint. So thick that it obscures the texture of the weave. And then when I draw into that, I'm actually drawing into the paint, which is a very weird feeling for me. So I'm making myself you know, uncomfortable by trying something different, experimenting.
Okay,
thank
I
you.
think actually Beth's had a question, and then Suzanne, and then Toby.
Okay.
Just a couple. So you stretch your canvas after you've finished your image.
Correct.
So you get to crop or figure out the size according to the image and the painting and the feeling of the painting, or do you do
Yes.
standard?
Well, I decided so I originally I would stretch my paintings afterwards because I would I didn't decide the composition. And so I would paint it and then I would choose out the best bits and stretch it. And also because I was traveling quite a lot. And so I would need to roll them up and put them in a tube. But that isn't the why I do it now. The reason I do it now is because I'm kind of a brute. I really press into the canvas really hard, and I like not having the give of the canvas. I like having a hard surface that I'm painting on, and then I let go of 2.5 inches all the way around. I know that it takes 2.5 inches to wrap around my stretcher bars. And so I just, the area around the edge, I paint, but it's not integral to the composition.
And then where did you get your sailing experience?
Oh, I don't have any sailing experience. I'm a complete dork. I'm just do what I'm told. And yeah, I don't have any sailing experience. I mean, you know, I just do what I'm told and then hopefully don't screw up too badly. Yeah.
Okay, Suzanne. You're muted. There you go.
Oh, I'm really, oh boy. I might not, can't do it.
Type it your question, Suzanne.
Uh,
Can you type your question?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because I have a lot of feedback.
Yeah, we're hearing the feedback. Can
Yeah,
you type
so
can you type it into the chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, you type it
I'm
into
on
the
two
chat.
things, so I'm sorry.
Can I say?
Okay, Toby, you have a question while Suzanne's typing.
I have 2 questions. It looks like you use very small brushes. What number brushes do you use?
I use a variety. Yeah, they probably are kind of small, sort of 6 to 8.
Uh-huh. It must take you a long time to finish a painting.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I haven't quite nailed that part yet.
And it looks like you might have a black outline around a lot of the things. Or am I wrong?
Do I? Maybe I do. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'm gonna have to go back
It's a
and
darker color. I don't think it's black.
It looks black.
Yeah, I think it's just a darker color, not black.
Yeah, I don't actually own any black paint.
Right.
So it probably would be a darker color.
So
Certainly
you use
sorry.
But it's paint, you use a small brush for it.
What's that?
You use a small brush for that outlining effect.
Gosh, I don't know what outline effect you're talking about. I probably also when I sketch onto the canvas with the charcoal or the pencil, I leave that. So that might be what we're seeing.
That's probably right. And
Yeah.
you know, what kind of red paint do you use? Do you use it with, because I know you said you do healthy stuff. So do you
Yeah, I use 2 and I use the Scheveningen's. I like Scheveningen. I like Old Holland paint is my favorite. So they're Scheveningen's rose, which is sort of like a primrose, I guess. And then I use their lake red, which is so I use a cool and a warm for each
I
color.
like lake red, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
like it a lot too. It's more red than vermilion, and it's
But you
great.
don't, do
It's
you
also
use any,
great if you're painting skin.
do you use any cam colors, cam red?
No, I don't.
That's what I figured. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So just, wondering how you got started in this, and do you write grants or how do you fund your adventures? And then I have another thing that I want to say, so I might as well
Sure.
say them both at the same time, is that years ago, I was asked to go on something called the Peace Boat and teach art. Do you know about that?
Well, I'm going to keep listening, and maybe it is, maybe it
Okay,
isn't.
okay. It's based in Japan. And now I'm not like you. I'm not really wanting to get on boats. I've never been on a cruise and not my thing. I like the ground, but I just thought you might be interested in that, in the Peace Boat that's based in Japan. And then my first question was how you said you're not a rich person, so how you fund all these trips. Do you
Yeah.
apply for grants and stuff?
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I will look into the Peace Boat. That's a really good, I didn't realize it was still a thing. I should definitely look into that. I so I first got into it because I had been painting water. And the reason I had been painting water is because so my girlfriend and I were going to travel around Spain, and we did. Um, and well, two things happened. First of all, 9/11 happened. So this was in 2001. And we were going to go to India. But then right when it happened, we weren't sure what the deal was with India and Pakistan. I don't know if anyone remembers that. So we're like, okay, we're not going to do that. So what we'll do is we'll hang out in Spain. So we were in Spain, in the very south, and La Doñana National Park. And I had no desire to paint water at all. As I mentioned, I grew up on the coast, and I never saw paintings that I could really relate to. So I never saw my voice in it. So I spent 3 days in this national park painting the dunes with my back to the water, painting the dunes. And that was because we weren't allowed to go inland because it's this national park, and there's like protected lynxes and things. It's like this incredible biodiverse, one of the most, I think, if not the most biodiverse places in Europe. So my ignorance, I was stuck on this beach painting the dunes, and I got really bored of painting the dunes. So after 3 days of doing that, I turned around. There's not a tree anywhere, so it's a blazing hot sun. I turn around, and I'm just looking at the Atlantic. I'm looking west. I'm looking at the Atlantic, and I think, I think I actually spoke out loud, even though I was sitting by myself. I think I actually said, "Okay, I'm going to paint you. I'm going to figure out a way to paint you in my own style." And I tried. The first painting is, it's like a landscape with this little corner of blue in it. And then what happened shortly after that was I was with my same friends, and we were cycling, and I fell off my bike, and I rolled down a hill and completely messed up my ankle and was absolutely filled with thorns. And so my friends continued on, and they were cycling the Picos, which I was in no condition to do anyway, especially not after that. So I went to northern Spain, and I convalesced in this tiny little fishing village. And I spent 2 months just sitting on the quay painting water. So yeah, it's a very long answer to your short question. I have a Master of Fine Arts from UCLA, and I was not really a painter so much. I was more of an interactive designer at that time, because that was the new up and coming thing, and I was excited about trying something different, something new. But then I did that for several years and decided I really much preferred getting my hands dirty, like literally dirty. So that's when I became a full-time painter.
Okay. Hey, Sony, you had your hand up as well at one point.
They're mostly answered, so I'm fine.
Okay. Okay. Laurie, did you have your hand up? Yes, Laurie.
I was just curious, do you use your photographs as reference, or you only paint directly from watching and looking at the water?
Oh, I totally use photographs. Yeah, absolutely. I need to make sure that I'm paying homage to the physics as much as I can. Yeah.
Do you have any tips or hints? I've also tried, I mean, I do paint photos. I use photos to paint water, not in the way that you do, in that it's just water, but maybe a boat in the water with reflections or animals and such. And I love your paintings and I love the effect. I'm just wondering if you is there any particular thing you do? I don't need your big secrets, but like a time of day or a certain lighting that you find helpful. Is there any hints you could offer?
I definitely prefer painting water when the light is on it. That's, I think, nicer, and you get more colors that way.
Certain time of day, you think? Is it more like that late afternoon, do you think?
Yeah, morning or late afternoon, anytime the sun isn't at too harsh of an angle, I think is really good. And then I would say, well, I get really turned on by the shapes, right? So I like goofy, ridiculous, kind of kidney bean shapes, and I just put them everywhere. So I don't know, just think about what's the thing that turns you on, is it the shapes, or is it the colors, or is it, maybe the reflection of the water back onto the boat, or
Oh, I
something,
ain't gonna dance with her.
something like that.
Now here it comes.
Whoever's got the husband in the room, could you mute yourself, please? I have a question. Have you ever had any thoughts about painting the Salton Sea while it's still there?
Definitely, absolutely, definitely. In fact, when you and I were chatting before, I mentioned that I went there during COVID just to kind of get out of the house, and I was instantly fell in love with it. I don't know how different it is. That was 5 years ago, so I don't know how different it is now.
It's a lot further out now. It's receded quite a lot. I find the interesting thing is that I can look out and I can judge the wind speed by the color of the water.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because well, during the day anyway, because when it's really dead calm, and it can be like a piece of glass sometimes, because of course it's the tide. And then as it gets, if you get like a mid blue, come out, oh, that's a stiff breeze. And then if it gets black, that's like really windy. And then then it gets white caps as the windiest of all.
Oh yeah, I think it's time to revisit it. This is probably a good time of year to do it too, right? And I'm pretty sure it's a Superfund site, isn't it?
I don't think so, no.
No?
But one of the things is do not drive out on the playa, on the exposed playa, because you'll be going, oh yeah, this is solid. You're going to be up to your doors in mud. And your off-roads or AAA are not going to come and get you, and you're going to be there till one of the locals, probably my husband, notices. And his pull-out prices start at $300.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Good advice. Good
Plus
advice.
extras to wash the muck off afterwards. Anyway, Suzanne, let's see if you've resolved your issues. Let's see if we can hear you again.
Hold on. Can't get it.
Well, while you're looking, I realize I didn't fully answer the question that was asked me before about funding these adventures. The first one, the captain and guy who came up with the idea for the expedition, the captain and guy who came up with the idea for the expedition actually helped me out. I mean, I was working for him, so he paid me to do some